So what impact will these commercial flights have? Let's bring in Christopher Baker. He's a travel writer and journalist joining us now from California. Thank you so much for joining us. You know,
it's a pleasure.
This is a milestone, but we shouldn't expect to see an overnight tourism boom. As more airlines, though, get more and more flights added, could that give motivation to increase demand?
Oh, that's already happening. Michael just mentioned 160,000 non-Cuban Americans, but Americans nonetheless, last year. Now, we've already seen this year an 84% increase in U.S. travel to Cuba. The rush is already on. I returned from Cuba just 2 weeks ago, and this is the first year that the traditional off-season is no longer a low season. Havana and the other places in Cuba are already seeing a lot of American visitors.
But as we heard, restrictions are still in place for Americans looking to travel to Cuba. They can't go as tourists. But how much of a hurdle really is that? Is it really just extra paperwork to fill out? I mean, that doesn't stop people from going.
Well, at this stage, it's more of a mental hurdle. Legally, of course, as you mentioned, only 12 categories of licensable travel exist. But most Americans are not aware that every single U.S. citizen is pre-approved to travel on what's called the people-to-people license. It is self-policing. You merely affirm on one single piece of paper, it could be an online form also, that you're traveling for that reason, and nobody is policing it. In a sense, it's permitting disguised tourism.
You said you were there just a couple of weeks ago. What changes have you seen when it comes to tourism in Cuba just within the last few months? Other than the mass amount of people that are starting to arrive, what have you seen as far as restaurants and places to stay and how to get around?
Well, this is a good point, because the tourism boom, and it's not just Americans, the Europeans are flooding too, is bringing money into the system, but it's also spurring a lot more private enterprise. Many of the hotels are full, so that's one reason that on my motorcycle group tours that I offer in Cuba, I'm using private room rentals. The advantage of that, too, is that you get to stay with Cubans and learn something about the Cuban lifestyle. So Cuba's private enterprise is now flourishing, and this is a direct result of, we won't call it tourism, we're not supposed to call it U.S. tourism, but let's just say U.S. visitation.
Some, though, worry that Cuba will change too fast, and a lot of people want to go visit Cuba and experience it before there's a lot of change. How long, though, do you think before we see some dramatic changes in tourism there?
Well, it's already happening. I mean, the tourism boom has had more impact in the last 2 years than the 2 decades prior that I've known Cuba. You're seeing Wi-Fi being put in all over the country by the Cuban state, I should add. You're seeing Cubans everywhere with their cell phones. You're seeing much more traffic. And as I mentioned, you're seeing the growth in private business. In the 2 key areas outside Havana that are particularly popular with tourists, that is the colonial city of Trinidad and the tobacco country of Vinales, I would say we're already at the threshold of it being spoiled, because commercialism is creeping in very quickly. You're seeing a massive souvenir stores. So the old, almost magical, innocent Cuba of old is already beginning to shift and change.
Christopher, what is the one thing that you would recommend people who've never been there before to do and to see? What's your best advice?
Well, obviously you need to get versed on what the hassles are, what the hardships of arranging travel are. My Moon Cuba guidebook, which I author, has just come out, and it has all the practicalities to plan. Careful planning is really the key here, because getting around outside Havana is not that simple. You have transportation difficulties. Again, I've already mentioned the hardship of securing hotels, because U.S. travel groups are already securing those hotels for next year. So good research is the key.
All right, Christopher Baker, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you joining us from California.
Thank you very much.